He's been general counsel, chief advocate, now president, just a tremendous advocate and leader and manager for our staff, our team, our members and organization. And then Joey Wender, a long-time friend to the competitive industry, long-time friend to me personally and to all of our staff. He's now the director of the Capital Projects Fund at the Treasury Department, $10 billion. Much of that $10 billion has gone out the door. You have a little bit more? A little bit more. And so we want to hear about what he's doing, how he's approached it, why he's adopted some of the policies that we think really set the model for then commerce and the rest of government and NTIA. He worked for Senator Markey from the Hill. Again, great friend, great policymaker, great leader. And Angie Kronenberg, I look forward to their conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, Joey. We're really excited to have you here. This is actually the second time this year we've had a chance to get together and talk about what's going on with the Capital Projects Fund. I've always called it the down payment to getting more broadband deployed. $10 billion, it was in the American Rescue Plan Act, which came before the Infrastructure Act. So we're in the middle of COVID, a real recognition that it's also, there's significant need for making sure that every American, every business can get connected to high-speed, future-proof broadband capability. So tell me, you are further along than the Infrastructure Act, as was intended by Congress. Mm-hmm. It's a down payment. So give us an overview of where things stand with the Capital Projects Fund right now.
Thanks, Angie. First of all, thank you to Angie and to Chip for inviting me down here to Tampa today to talk to all of you. It's really good to be here. Angie had it right. The Capital Projects Fund serves as a down payment on the administration's goal to bring affordable, reliable, high-speed internet to all Americans. And Angie also put it well. The American Rescue Plan came before the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So you got to remember, we were in the midst, deep in the pandemic, and everybody in this room already knew that broadband was essential, right? You can't live without it for commerce, for communication, for healthcare, for education. But in many ways, the pandemic itself was the catalyst, right, that resulted in the $10 billion of the American Rescue Plan, and then later the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the $40+ billion for broadband. Because the pandemic was the national teaching moment, right? We knew it. Yes. We knew it. Everybody in this room knew it. We're at a telecom conference right now, right? Everybody knew it. But man, did it put into clear, crystal focus when we were all social distancing how essential it is, whether we're in a pandemic or not. And so the rescue plan included $10 billion for connectivity. And what we did is we published guidance soon thereafter that said that broadband at 100 symmetrical, so an explicit preference for fiber. You know, people ask, did you put your thumb on the scale in favor of fiber? Yes, yes we did, right? Because we don't want to make investments that last just years. We want to make investments that last for decades. And so that's what the Capital Projects Fund is.
Well, there are a lot of fiber providers that are here. And so it's a great opportunity for them and their business models to be able to take advantage, either directly or perhaps even indirectly as subcontractors, right? To be building out this very important infrastructure, and it's happening prior to the BEAD funding. We know that's a little bit longer of a process. So where do things stand right now? I see announcements come out of Treasury, but give us a perspective of how many states and territories have taken advantage of this down payment?
Sure. Great question. So first, our funding was dependent upon a formula that was established by the statute. right? It had to do with population and then subweighted for percentage in poverty, a certain level of poverty, and rural areas. So states immediately knew what their allocation was going to be. You know, on the low side is, you know, North Dakota, DC, we're on 100 million, and the largest obviously is California, just over $500 million. So the allocation was set. And so what states had to do, or have done, is applied to us, said, here's how we wish to intend to use the money. I do want to emphasize what Chip said a few minutes ago. Congress, both in the BEAD program and in the Capital Projects Fund, made a very conscious decision to make it, you know, bottom up, right? People ask, oh, you run a $10 billion program. Like, I don't run a $10 billion program. I oversee 50 programs, right? There are really 50 different programs, plus DC, plus the territories. That's what it is. So every state gets to decide, okay, within the framework that we set out, what is the right approach in my state to address the critical needs that exist? And so every state applied, and to date, we have now awarded $8.5 billion of the 10 in every state. So we're almost at the end of the approval process, which essentially greenlights states to go forth, put the RFP out, run the competitive process so we can get bids won and shovels on the ground.
We do appreciate the reinforcement that these are competitive opportunities.
Absolutely.
We've seen in the past where some of the federal agencies have, you know, weighted the incumbents. They've already been there, they've been getting funding for a while, right? So we think it's really important that Congress made it a priority, and thank you for your leadership.
Absolutely.
And to the states for also saying competition helps drive down costs, not just for the end users, but ultimately for these programs, so hopefully the money can reach further and can do more, right?
Absolutely.
So
it's not just bringing down the price, you know, that competition results in. It's also, we're attempting to solve a market failure.
Yes.
Right, let's just say the words. The reason why there are tens of millions of locations that are not served in this country is because, well, I mean, I can say this because I'm at a competitive conference. Incumbent providers didn't want to build out there, right? They've chosen not to go there. Like, that's why we are where we are today. And so, from our perspective, we need to have an all of the above approach, right? We want to encourage, you know, competitive carriers to come in. We want to improve. We want to encourage out-of-the-box solutions, because clearly, left to their own devices, it didn't work. It didn't happen.
Yeah, music to our ears.
Thank you.
So you have $1.5 billion left. So I take it there are a few states, territories to go.
Yep.
That those will be coming, I imagine,
Yes,
in the
they will.
next few months,
Yes,
right?
they will.
And then what's the next step? So the states now and the territories will be running their process. And then what's your role become? How much are you involved in looking at what the results are and reporting back to Congress, to the administration?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
We have a lot of work to do. I wish it was, you know, I wish the hard part was over, but in many ways the hard part has just to come. Right, so I say we've awarded 8.5 of $10 billion, but we haven't cut checks. Okay, our program runs as a traditional grant reimbursement program with robust compliance and reporting requirements. So, for instance, a state like, well, I'm in Florida right now. You know, they're using about $270 million of their money for broadband projects, and we've awarded that in the sense that we've green-lighted the state to put out a competitive process and allow bids to come in. We haven't given them anything, zero, right? Aside from a small amount they can use for admin funding. The state will be paid and reimbursed as construction happens, right? So people like to say, oh, you gave out all your money. You're like, no. We haven't given out very much of it because this gives us tremendous leverage to ensure that providers and those that win the awards do as they say, do the build out to the standards we require, and then light up the final locations. You know, I liken it to a deck that you build on a house. right? If you hire someone to build a deck for 10 grand on the back, 20 grand, I was like, you're probably not going to build a deck for 10 grand. We'll say 20 grand on the back of your house. Do you give them 20 grand up front?
No.
No, of course not. These are milestones. These are construction projects. So that means we have a very, 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 robust way of monitoring how it all goes and ensure that it actually happens and the money is used for exactly the purpose for which it's intended.
And tell us a little bit about, since this is the down payment.
That's right.
What's the coordination effort that's going on with the other agencies like NTIA on the BEAD project that's coming?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, my friend Phil Murphy's not here. I've been texting with him earlier this morning. I said we would put an empty chair out with his name on it. No. I've known Phil for a very long time.
And he will be here later. He just missed his flight this morning, unfortunately. So I know some of you, we love Joey. We always want to see him. But some of you who may be like, oh, where's Phil? He is coming. You'll get a chance to talk to him. He's
great. The Joey Phil show was going to be tremendous. This was a prep session for our Vegas residency that we were starting later this year. I've got completely sidetracked by Phil Murphy. What was the question again?
I know, yeah, me too. I was like, coordination with Phil.
Of course.
Besides coordinating when to get to the airport to get on a plane, how else are you coordinating with Phil?
Right, so the pro tip is to fly the night before. But, so two ways I want to emphasize here. Second, I'll talk about the map. A different map than the maps that we've all been talking about. But first, there's general coordination in the sense of we are working hand in glove with the Department of Commerce, with NTIA, with all the states. Because again, their programs like our program, it's bottom up, right? It's the states that are driving this decision making. And so as we're talking to states, we have collectively, the two agencies, hand in hand, telling states, how are you globally, how are you long-term determining, holistically is the word I'm looking for, holistically, how all these pieces of money are going to fit together to reach that ultimate goal of coverage for every location, right? Every state should have a plan. I think at this point now does have a plan about, okay, we're going to use capital projects money here. We obviously know RDOF and Reconnect money is going in these places, and here's how we're going to fit, BEAD on top of that later. I mean, that's exactly the kind of conversation that should be happening at every single state. And so, some weeks I talk to my counterparts at NTIA, as well as the Commission and Ag, more than I talk to people outside of my office in the Department of Treasury, right? I mean, we're all tasked with one goal. Right, and at the end of the day, you're bringing service to somebody's house. I'd like to think that we're so important and we're so unique, but I promise that household will never say, God, I love my Department of Treasury connection. Right, I love my Reconnect connection. Like, no one will ever say that. So clearly we have to be working together. The other thing I do want to mention is that there is this federal funding map, right? That the FCC has debuted. We are requiring our recipients, providers, to provide us with the location of every place that's going to be served. And so everywhere we serve will end up in that map. And I'm proud to say that as of now, we believe that our money will fund over 2 million locations around the country. So every one of those locations will be in the map.
Yeah. And where do we stand right now on the actual residential locations that are considered unserved in the U.S.? We're around 15 to 20 million?
I just heard 30 on the last panel.
I know, and I wasn't sure if that was 30 million people or 30 million households, like actual locations.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yes.
But 2 million is important. That's
a lot of households.
That will take, some of those locations that would be BEAD eligible. Right, and takes care of that.
Absolutely.
The down payment, my favorite word on this panel, that is the down payment that Congress intended. And then what do you think in terms of delivery of the service? What's your expectation? How many years out do you think this is going to take to get to the 2 million locations?
The great news for our money is because it's tied to a COVID relief bill, there's a deadline on expending the money. It's the end of 2026.
Yeah.
So we've got just over 3 years to go, which having that deadline has pushed states so strongly to get going.
Right.
Now that we've approved almost all the money, you are right. You took the words out of my mouth. We expect to have approved the remainder by the end of the year. And the expectation, and what most states are driving for, particularly northern states where the ground is cold, the idea is that every state should be digging when the ground thaws in 2024. Right? If you're going to meet the 26 deadline, we should be working by the construction season in 2024. And I'm confident that almost every state is going to meet that.
Yeah, that'll be incredible.
It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
To see children who don't have to sit in the McDonald's parking lot
to
do their homework,
absolutely.
or to go to the library that maybe is only open until 6 p.m. to do their homework, to be able to do it at home. But it's not the only funding that we need to get people connected. So I want to just transition a little bit into a program that you're not in charge of, but I think is really key to ensuring that every American can get connected, and that's the Affordable Connectivity Program. For those of you who may not be as familiar with this program, this is for low-income households to get essentially a monthly stipend so that they can afford to get onto the service and stay on the service. So it's $30 a month for most households. It's more for those who are in tribal areas. And this money's been flowing. It first was called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, which Joey worked on when he was working for Senator Markey. So thank you for your leadership on that program. And then it was made more permanent through the term, we all call it the ACP. You have to have an acronym when you're in Washington.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's the ACP, $14+ billion. And now it has been such a popular program. We have over 21 million households who are connected because of it. But the FCC has now been warning us that at the rate it is going, April of next year is when the money runs out. So we've been advocating for Congress to allocate additional funding for this, and how important it is for all of the deployment funds from the Capital Projects Fund that you're in charge of to the BEAD program to work. So tell me a little bit about your perspective. I've heard you talk about ACP, so I really wanted to tee it up for you because I know that it's top of mind for you as well, even though you're not in charge of it.
It is top of mind. First of all, thank you for all your advocacy on it. It is such a key tenet of my program, of the BEAD program, of really the whole infrastructure that exists right now to do build-outs, right, to bring broadband to every corner of the United States. The Capital Projects Fund requires providers to participate in the ACP. Full stop. You have to participate in the ACP if you're going to get a dime of our money. Affordability is clearly one of the greatest barriers to adoption, right? In some ways, bringing access, right, and bringing a wire to somebody's house is easy. It's easy, right? You put it up on a pole, you dig, right? We're subsidizing the build out. We're finding every location. Okay, that's the easy part. And
Especially when policymakers streamline the process.
That's right. They streamline the process.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but where there's dollars, it's easy to do. Getting people to adopt the service, particularly when affordability is the barrier, that's really hard. And that's why the ACP is just essential. And so I've been saying for a long time that if the ACP goes away, it will have cascading effects, both on low-income families who can't afford to adopt the internet, and there are enormous economic implications for that, right? Enormous. Everybody needs to be able to be online. If you are not, you are on the other side of the digital divide. You are at an enormous disadvantage. But it also impacts providers, right? As that is a source of revenue. As we're trying to figure out how many subscribers are going to be, subscribing in a specific area. And so I just think, I'm just so thankful, Angie, that NCOMPAS and others are saying it so loudly that there is no other choice. if you believe in affordable, reliable, high-speed internet for all, you have to fund ACP.
Right.
You have to.
And for our member companies, they have found that having that revenue stream into their business helps them with the business case to deploy in an equitable fashion to so many more locations than they would have been able to do that. So that's the message that our team has been taking to the Hill. Caroline Olson, who heads up our legislative affairs, has really been leading the charge on the Hill with this, with a very large coalition. And then on the substantive policy issues, Lindsay Stern has been working with our member companies along with supporting the work that Caroline is doing. And in this very large coalition, it's not often in Washington that you see NCOMPAS as the competitive association working directly with the incumbent associations and their members on an initiative that we all agree on. And that has been such a critical moment to really ensuring that the voices are echoing one another, but also just collectively, like a choir, singing from the same songbook. So this really should not be hard, but it is, right? Because things are a little wonky right now on Capitol Hill, for a better word. So
it is, well, two things. One, I mean, the coalition is as broad and wide as it gets, right? When you've got NCOMPAS, Comcast, and the most progressive, public interest groups that are on the same page, I mean, this is truly a nonpartisan issue,
yes.
right? A completely nonpartisan and genuine commitment to it. Yes, this is an extremely challenging time, though. I mean, I worked on the Hill for 13 and a half years. This is an exceptionally challenging time. Look no further than the government, potential another government shutdown in a month. So I don't know how this gets, I don't know exactly how this gets done, but my message to your members would be, there's a lot of rooms like this in different industries right now that are saying, we need this. We need this, whatever it is, whether this is in the energy context, the education context, the healthcare context, whatever it is, it's like, we got to get this in the next deal, right? Whatever the appropriation bill is. And so it's so important that our voices are heard as loudly as possible, because in many ways, because everybody agrees with the ACP,
right.
It's great. So you're not really competing against anybody within our industry.
Nope.
You're competing against all sorts of other priorities that are right now percolating and floating around Capitol Hill. And so that's why it's important to be loud.
right, we need a functioning government.
That would be nice.
And we need more ACP funding. Those really should be the two messages from our industry right now for Congress. So, all right, I think we have time for one question from the audience.
Sure.
And so I really just want to open it up. Does anyone have a question for Joey you want him to answer on stage because you want it recorded? Here we go. So this is Craig Gilly, and he's got a question. The mic's coming, Craig.
I'm just not familiar. How are you making sure that a particular unserved area isn't double served or isn't double funded?
Sure, great question. And as you know, double funded in the sense of RDOF or Reconnect.
Any of the four programs, coming from BEAD, from your program.
Well, the good news is BEAD hasn't happened, right? And so what we're doing is we require states to tell us, right, how they're ensuring that duplication is not happening, one. And two, we have pushed very hard on Ag and the Commission, on the FCC, to ensure that data is available to states. And we're going through this right now with ACAM as well, right? The ACAM offers have just, enhanced ACAM, I should say, have just happened at the FCC, right? We're working to ensure that everybody's got a plan so there isn't the overlap that you're describing.
So it's states are at the forefront of that?
States are at the forefront, but states are the forefront of all of this, right? But we're requiring them to tell us how they're ensuring that this happens. it's a jigsaw. I mean, admittedly, it is a jigsaw, and we are working in an environment where Congress, as you know, has funded multiple agencies to do similar things. Now, I do think there is an advantage of having different types of programs because they're able to, different types of flexibilities, right? And they can go into slightly different types of areas so that in the end, you can fill in the whole map, but it does create these challenges. But we are certainly addressing them head on.
And then from Encompass's perspective on the various programs, we've just continued to emphasize to each of the agencies how important competition is in these programs and how important it is that they're not just funding monopoly providers, that there is, you know, a basic requirement that they make competition available through open access, wholesale policies that we think are really important to driving more choice and innovation ultimately to areas. This is taxpayer dollars, right? And taxpayers shouldn't be short shrift
Absolutely.
on competition too. So really great question. Thank you for
having me.
joining us.
I'll be here all day. I'm looking forward to it.
We really appreciate that. And for members in the room, we have an opportunity for a roundtable with Joey and Phil at 2 o'clock. If that is something you want to participate in, you can talk to Andrew. If you're not a member and want to participate, I want to point out, is Clay in the room? I don't see Clay. Julie's not in the room. You can go to Andrew to learn how to be a member of Encompass so that you can join us at 2 o'clock for the roundtable. So if you will thank Joey, and then everybody stay in their seats after we thank Joey, because we're going to have a couple of states and NTIA representative join us to do a panel, but we'll need to do a little transition with the chairs.
And I just want to say, they're the ones that are really doing the work, right? I say that, you know, I oversee 50 programs. So much of the work is happening at the state level. They're really on the front line. So I do think, I'm going to stay. I think it's going to be a great panel because we just appreciate so much of their work.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time.